Have you ever felt that living righteously has become an act of rebellion? Today, what was once celebrated as a virtue is ridiculed, and what was once shameful is now displayed like a crown of glory. We are surrounded by a culture that tells you not to be so radical, not to be so conservative, not to be so Christian. A culture that pushes you to compromise your values while smiling at you for doing so. But deep down, you know something's off. You know the world isn't as liberated as it claims. It's confused, wounded, empty. You know that behind every modern trend lies an intention to normalize what separates humanity from God and ridicule what brings us closer. And while many have already given in, there are others, like you, who feel God is telling them, "Don't settle, wake up." We live in a time where truth seems offensive and sin seems inspiring, where questioning the darkness makes you an enemy and standing up for what's right makes you an outsider. But this is not the time to hide your light, but to shine it brighter. That's why this message isn't for the lukewarm. It's for those who still want to honor God, even when the world no longer does. It's for those who know that living according to the Bible isn't outdated, it's countercultural, and every countercultural life will face opposition, but it will also have heaven's support. Today, we're going to explore 12 principles that the world despises, but that God honors. Truths that are no longer popular, but remain powerful. Each one reveals how to live a life aligned with God's heart, even if it means going against the grain. Prepare yourself. What's coming isn't comfortable, but it is true, and perhaps, just perhaps, it's exactly what your spirit needed to hear. And this is where we must begin, right where we left off, in the courage to live in a way the world no longer understands. Because one of the most ridiculed values today is precisely this: reserving purity for marriage. What is an honor to God is a source of mockery to the world. But nothing reveals the difference between following the culture and following Christ more clearly than the way we treat intimacy. Today, they tell you that waiting is unnatural, that reserving yourself for one person means missing out on the experience, that purity is a religious invention, and that the body is merely an object to be explored without limits. Our culture celebrates the fleeting but despises the sacred. Yet God never designed intimacy as an experiment, but as a covenant, not as a game, but as a spiritual language that unites souls, not just bodies. Entering marriage as a virgin doesn't signify ignorance. It signifies conviction. It means you chose to guard something precious, not because you're weak, but because you have self-control. It means you understood that your body isn't a place for just anyone, but a temple where God dwells. And even though the world might say this is outdated, I assure you that heaven never considered it obsolete. Purity is not repression, it is protection. It is preserving your heart and your identity from a world that has trivialized what God called holy. When you choose to wait, you are not losing anything. You are gaining peace, honor, and the blessing of experiencing intimacy free from the ghosts of the past, from comparisons, from hidden wounds. And yes, few will applaud you. Probably no one will understand. But remember what we said before. This path is not for those who seek human approval, but for those who wish to walk with God, even if it makes them different. Because being different in a confused world is not a flaw, it is evidence that the light within you still burns. And if this principle seems harsh, just wait, because what's coming is even more crucial. We're going to delve into a topic that the world has completely distorted, and if we don't reclaim it, we'll lose entire generations. Today, we live in a culture that has confused love with permissiveness. We are told that correcting a child traumatizes them, that setting limits represses them, that saying no is being authoritarian. And so, many parents have stopped exercising authority for fear of being criticized or misunderstood. But when a home loses discipline, it also loses direction. Without clear boundaries, children don't grow up secure, but disoriented. Raising children with discipline doesn't mean being harsh, aggressive, or cold. It means teaching a child self-governance, understanding that their actions have consequences and that respect isn't optional, but a fundamental value. Limits aren't meant to confine, but to protect. A child who learns to obey at home will grow into an adult capable of obeying God, respecting others, and making wise decisions. A lack of discipline produces a fragile, impulsive generation lacking self-control. Children accustomed to receiving everything effortlessly grow into adults who are easily frustrated. And what began as, "I want to give them what I didn't have," ends with, "They don't know how to value anything because they never learned to strive." Loving them isn't about giving them everything, but about guiding them to develop character. Discipline is an expression of profound love. It means, "I correct you because I love you too much to let you ruin your life." God himself disciplines his children because he wants to shape them, not harm them. And when this principle is applied at home, children grow with identity, security, and purpose. Parents who correct raise strong children. Those who don't correct raise wounded children, even if they don't realize it now. Because a heart without guidance is a heart exposed to the world, and the world doesn't educate, it destroys. True parenting requires firmness and tenderness, authority and affection, correction and understanding. When a home regains discipline, it also regains peace. Children who know boundaries understand order. Children who understand order find rest. And children who find rest grow with the maturity to face life without breaking down at the first challenge. When a person learns to govern themselves, they also learn to protect themselves from that which seeks to control them. And few enemies are as subtle, accepted, and harmful as alcohol and cigarettes. Society celebrates them as part of the fun, as symbols of freedom or maturity, but behind every "just for today" lie millions of lives that ended up trapped without realizing it. Alcohol has become a disguised emotional refuge. It's consumed to relax, to forget, to fit in. Cigarettes are used to soothe anxiety or feel calmer, but both work the same way. They promise momentary relief while sowing silent destruction. What begins as a casual habit ends up taking control of character, health, willpower, and even identity. No one plans to become addicted. No one starts out thinking they'll lose family, money, health, or dignity. It all begins with "nothing will happen," but something will. The body deteriorates, the mind weakens, and the spirit fades. There is no true freedom when a substance dictates your emotions, your decisions, or your behavior. Being a slave to a vice has never been a victory. It's a chain wrapped in festive paper. Avoiding alcohol and cigarettes isn't fanaticism or exaggeration. It's wisdom. It's recognizing that your body wasn't created to be polluted, but to reflect God's presence. It's understanding that what you allow into your life can either uplift you or destroy you. And it's having the courage to say, "I don't need this," even when everyone around you is celebrating. True strength isn't about drinking more than others, but about proving you don't need to feel like you belong. True maturity isn't about lighting a cigarette, but about having the discipline to reject what can harm you. Self-control isn't applauded at parties, but it's celebrated in heaven. Just as we must take care of our bodies and our will, we must also take care of the most important pact in a relationship, because there are decisions that affect not only our present, but also the legacy we will leave behind. Just as personal decisions affect the course of one's life, decisions made as a couple determine the course of an entire family. And one of the most overlooked decisions today is legal marriage. Modern culture has normalized cohabitation without commitment, living as husband and wife without assuming responsibilities and calling what is simply convenience love. But a relationship without a pact is a relationship without foundation. Getting legally married is not just another piece of paper, nor a meaningless formality. It is the public and spiritual acknowledgement that both partners are willing to assume mutual responsibility. It is moving from "we're trying it out" to "we're committed." It is giving stability to the home, emotional security to the children, and honoring the design God established from the beginning. Marriage was never created to be an experiment, but a sacred covenant with intention, loyalty, and purpose. When a couple avoids marriage to avoid complications, what they really fear is commitment. And a love that fears commitment is incomplete. The marriage covenant protects, orders, and strengthens. It is not a prison, it is a covering. It is not a burden, it is a building. And although many today reject it, it remains the right way to unite two lives under God's blessing. Living together without getting married may seem practical, modern, or easier, but ease doesn't build strong homes. Stability comes from commitment, from the conscious decision to unite not only bodies, but also decisions, responsibilities, and a future. Legal marriage honors the couple, honors the home, and honors the creator of marriage. Because a strong relationship isn't built on empty promises, but on real commitments. And just as marriage should reflect order and honor, so too should the way we present ourselves to the world reflect dignity and respect. When we understand that commitments before God require order, we also understand that our daily lives speak volumes even before we open our mouths. And one of the areas where a person's character is most reflected is in their manner of dress. Clothing may seem like a superficial detail, but it actually reveals intention, respect, and the image we choose to project to the world. Today, society promotes the opposite, dressing to provoke, to attract attention, to compete in sensuality. Digital platforms have turned the body into a visual commodity, and many end up believing that their value lies in how much skin they show or how many glances they generate. But modesty is not repression, it is identity. It is knowing who you are without needing to display everything. It is recognizing that your body has dignity and purpose, not just appearance. Dressing modestly doesn't mean hiding or feeling guilty about looking good. It means choosing clothes that reflect respect for yourself and those around you. It means asking yourself, does what I'm wearing honor God? Or does it simply feed the desire or approval of others? Modesty is balance, beauty without excess, elegance without provocation, freedom without falling into vulgarity. Your clothes can become a silent testament. People hear your words, but they observe your life. And when they see someone who dresses with dignity, they discover a profound message. Here is someone who doesn't need to sell their image to feel valuable. Here is someone who isn't desperate for attention, but lives with purpose. The world will tell you that you must show more to be worth more, that you must follow the trend, even if it goes against your convictions. But modesty reminds you that you were not created to impress the world, but to honor heaven. And when you honor God, even with the way you dress, you send a powerful message. Your identity is not for sale. Your dignity is not negotiable. And just as the body deserves respect, so does the truth. Because there is a modern ideology that tries to distort what God established from the beginning, and we must address it with clarity and conviction. Today, we live in an era where questioning gender ideology is considered an act of intolerance, when in reality, it is an act of fidelity to the truth. Modern culture has built a system where emotions outweigh facts, where personal perception seeks to replace biological reality, and where any voice that dares to defend God's original design is silenced, ridiculed, or attacked. But the truth doesn't change simply because the world decides to disguise it. Gender ideology starts from a dangerous premise. You can be whatever you feel, and while it may sound liberating, it ends up turning people into slaves of unstable emotions. transforming an internal conflict into a permanent identity. Instead of healing wounds, it deepens them. Instead of providing clarity, it creates more confusion. Instead of bringing people closer to their purpose, it distances them from the truth that can bring them peace. Rejecting this ideology doesn't mean hating, excluding, or humiliating anyone. On the contrary, it means loving enough not to validate a lie that destroys from within. God intentionally created man and woman with differences that are not mistakes, but purpose. We are not interchangeable parts. We are precisely designed beings. Masculinity and femininity are not social constructs. They are expressions of the Creator reflected in the body, soul, and spirit. Identity confusion is not a sign of freedom, but of disconnection. A generation that doesn't know who it is ends up embracing any narrative that promises liberation. But true freedom doesn't come from redefining oneself, but from returning to the one who created us. Gender ideology promises acceptance, but it produces deep wounds, family ruptures, emotional anguish, and a society that loses its most basic foundation: human identity. Defending God's design is an act of courage in times when truth is unpopular. We don't seek to win debates, but to protect hearts. We don't seek to attack ideas, but to illuminate paths. Because when a society ceases to recognize the difference between man and woman, it also loses order, family, and a sense of purpose. And when that happens, everything else begins to fragment. There are times when keeping the truth requires more strength than speaking it, and this is one of them. Standing firm in what God established doesn't make you intolerant. It makes you consistent. It makes you faithful. It makes you a light in the midst of a darkness that confuses identity with ideology. Just as identity needs protection, so too does faith need a home where it can grow strong. Therefore, the following principle is crucial for keeping your spirit firm in a world that constantly seeks to extinguish it. In a world where everyone wants to design their own version of faith, attending church has become optional, almost unnecessary for many. "I believe in God my way," they repeat time and again, as if spirituality could be sustained without community, without teaching, and without accountability. But faith wasn't created to be lived in isolation. It was designed to grow in fellowship, in unity, and in communion with other believers. The church is not a building. It is a place where God gathers his people to strengthen them. There, character is refined, the spirit is sharpened, sin is confronted, and purpose is renewed. Without that environment, faith weakens, hearts grow cold, and God's voice becomes harder to recognize amidst the noise of the world. Not attending church is not always rebellion. Often, it is simply the first step toward a lifeless spiritual life. The enemy knows that an isolated believer is a vulnerable believer. That's why one of his most effective strategies is to separate people from the congregation. He doesn't push them directly into sin. He simply leads them gradually away from the source of teaching, support, and correction. A week away seems normal. 2 weeks feel liberating. 3 weeks later, they no longer feel the need to return. That's the danger. Regular church attendance brings order to the heart. It grounds you. It reminds you who you are, where you're going, and why you can't live like the world. It surrounds you with imperfect people, yes, but people who seek the same thing you do, to please God in the midst of a culture that wants the exact opposite. The church is a hospital where God heals, a workshop where he shapes, a family where he sustains. Going to church doesn't make you perfect, but it keeps you grounded. It doesn't make you better than others, but it helps you stay on the right path when others have strayed. It's not a religious obligation, it's a spiritual necessity for anyone who wants to remain steadfast in their faith. And just as the church strengthens, we must also be wary of what weakens us. For it is not enough to draw near to what builds up. It is also necessary to distance ourselves from what destroys. There are decisions that seem small, quiet, almost harmless, but they determine the entire course of a life. And few decisions weigh as heavily as choosing who to walk alongside. Influences don't always arrive announcing themselves as dangers. Often they come as laughter, companionship, supposed friendship, or simply hanging out. But every person we let into our lives brings with them an atmosphere, a direction, and a spirit that sooner or later affects us more than we're willing to admit. Stepping away from bad influences doesn't mean feeling superior or looking down on anyone. It means recognizing that your faith, your peace, and your purpose are too precious to surrender to environments that destroy them. There are conversations that extinguish faith, friendships that chill the soul, and surroundings that slowly disconnect you from God without you even noticing. It doesn't happen suddenly. It happens with an invitation, a joke, a light criticism, a just for today. And when you wake up, you're no longer the same. Bad influences teach you to normalize what God hates, to justify what once hurt you, to tolerate what you once rejected. They don't need to force you to sin. They only need to weaken your conviction. And when conviction falls, everything else falls with it. The enemy will always use people rather than circumstances, because a voice close by has more power than a distant attack. Surrounding yourself with people who live in disorder will turn you into someone who justifies disorder. Surrounding yourself with critics will make you lose your sense of gratitude. Surrounding yourself with those who live in sin will, sooner or later, lead you to call it normal. Not because you are bad, but because influences shape you, whether you like it or not. Separating isn't rejection, it's protection. It's saying, I can't keep walking down a path that takes me further from who I want to be. It's understanding that some friendships are seasons, not destinations. It's having the courage to close doors that heaven never opened, even if it hurts, even if you're criticized, even if they tell you you've changed. Because yes, you did change, and for the better. Choosing the right people to surround yourself with is choosing the environment where your spirit will grow. A healthy environment builds up, a toxic one destroys. No one can move toward a life of purpose if they continue to cling to relationships that lead them in the opposite direction. Just as we take care of our relationships, we must also take care of the time we set aside for God. Because without that spiritual rest, even the best intentions weaken. When a person decides to distance themselves from negative influences, they also learn to protect something even more valuable, their communion with God. And one of the most powerful ways to strengthen that relationship is by keeping the Sabbath day holy, a principle that many have forgotten, ignored, or replaced with the pressures of modern life. In a world that demands relentless productivity, constant activity, and filling every minute, setting aside a day for God has become an almost revolutionary act. Observing the Sabbath is not simply about resting, it is acknowledging that we are not machines, that not everything depends on us, and that God deserves a sacred place in our lives. It is a weekly reminder of who sustains our lives, who provides, who guides us, and who called us. It is pausing the routine to connect with the eternal. Today, society glorifies constant productivity. It tells you that if you don't work, you lose, that if you don't keep busy, you fall behind. And so, many believers have exchanged rest for exhaustion, worship for distractions, and the presence of God for never-ending responsibilities. But a heart that never stops, sooner or later becomes empty, and a life without pause for God becomes a life without direction. Observing the Sabbath is not legalism, it is obedience. It is understanding that this time is not a luxury, but a spiritual necessity. It is saying to the Lord, my rhythm is not dictated by the world, but by you. On this day, The soul is ordered, the mind is clarified, and the spirit is strengthened. It is a divine gift that reminds us that our worth lies not in what we do, but in who we are to Him. Setting aside a day to honor God reduces stress and adds peace. It quiets the noise and brings revelation. It takes you away from the world's rhythm and aligns you with heaven. It's not about which day you choose, but about your willingness to pause, give thanks, worship, and allow God to renew what the week has worn down. And just as rest restores the spirit, there is a habit that nourishes that restoration every day. A principle that, if lacking, weakens the spiritual life without one even realizing it. When a person learns to quiet the noise of the world, that's when they can hear the voice that truly matters. And that voice is found in only two places: prayer and the Word of God. There is no spiritual growth without intimacy with God, just as there is no physical life without breathing. Praying and reading the Bible are not religious activities. They are essential needs of the soul. Prayer is the moment when your heart is laid bare before the Creator. It is where you take your burdens, your doubts, your fears, and also your joys. It is the space where your spirit finds direction, where your mind aligns, where your faith is strengthened, and where your will is broken to be molded by God. A day without prayer is a day lived with human strength, and that is why many live exhausted. Because they have tried to wage spiritual battles with limited energy. Reading the Bible daily is like opening a window to let in light. It's allowing God's truth to confront your inner lies, renew your thinking, and purify your heart. The Word doesn't just inform, it transforms. Every verse shapes your character, corrects your attitudes, illuminates your decisions, and protects you from deception. Without the Word, the heart hardens. Without the Word, the mind becomes confused. Without the Word, the spirit slowly grows cold. The Christian life isn't sustained by emotion, but by relationship. And that relationship is cultivated every day, even on days when you don't feel like it, when you're tired, when you don't know what to say. Spiritual discipline isn't for the perfect, but for those who are dependent. For those who understand that far from God, there is only emptiness. When you pray, you talk to God. When you read the Bible, God speaks to you. And when both become habits, life's chaos loses its power. Your discernment is sharpened, your peace strengthened, your purpose clarified, and your spirit awakened. Intimacy with God doesn't change circumstances. It changes your ability to deal with them. And if you want to protect your life, your faith, and your purpose, there's one final step you must never ignore: guarding your heart and setting emotional boundaries. Because an unguarded heart is the perfect target for confusion and destruction. Taking care of your heart is one of life's most silent but most decisive battles. You can attend church, read the Bible, serve, help others, discipline yourself. But if you don't protect your emotions, sooner or later your spiritual life will fracture. Because the heart is where decisions, desires, wounds, and intentions are born. If the enemy manages to touch your heart, he can touch everything else. Guarding your heart doesn't mean closing yourself off, becoming cold or distrustful. It means learning to discern who deserves access to your emotions and who doesn't. Today, people attach themselves quickly, give themselves away quickly, trust quickly, and break up quickly. They form deep emotional bonds with people who don't respect boundaries, don't value commitment, and aren't ready for healthy love. And in the end, it's those bonds that drag believers into places they should never have gone. Setting emotional boundaries is an act of spiritual maturity. It's recognizing that not all closeness is healthy, that not all affection becomes love, and that not every connection comes from God. There are people who can destroy your peace in minutes, sow doubt, manipulate, exploit your vulnerability, or pressure you to give in where God has asked for firmness. Boundaries aren't a wall, they're a doorway managed with wisdom. Protecting your heart also means knowing your own weaknesses, knowing when to walk away, when to pause, when not to respond, when to say, "This isn't right for me." A believer without boundaries lives exhausted, confused, and emotionally drained. But a believer who guards their heart lives with purpose, clarity, and stability. God doesn't want your heart to be a battleground for just anyone. He wants it to be a garden where only He has the authority to plant. When you choose to guard your emotions, you're saying, "I won't give my peace to someone who doesn't know how to cherish it. I won't give my courage to someone who doesn't know how to honor it. I won't give my heart where God hasn't asked for it." And that's where a profound transformation occurs. You begin to love without losing yourself, to give without emptying yourself, and to relate without compromising your identity. Guarding your heart is a sign of self-love, but above all, of obedience to God's plan. Because your heart is too precious to give away without discernment, too fragile to neglect, too holy to place in the wrong hands. And when you protect it properly, you discover that true emotional freedom lies not in opening it to everyone, but in opening it only to those who truly honor God.